Hey folks, Mark Levin here. Now, before we dive in today's episode, I want to talk about something truly valuable, protecting your financial future with gold. It's called diversification. Now, for that, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're the real deal with 5-star service and a sterling reputation. So give them a call today. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Trust me, you'll thank yourself in the future. Now let's get to the show. Results may vary. Consult with your financial professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. My goodness. A lot has happened in the last 48, 72 hours, and we're going to cover it all right here, only as we can. We're going to start with the assassination attempt on the president. We're going to talk about the selection of J.D. Vance and a massive decision in Florida that I'm very proud of because our people at Landmark Legal Foundation played a very significant role in that. I do want to say up front, a lot of people on radio and TV are commenting on what's taking place in Milwaukee and on politics, and it's very, very important that they do. We want to hear from everybody. In 1976, as a young Turk, I campaigned for Ronald Reagan in Pennsylvania, and the Republican establishment said he can't win. He can't win. And they backed Gerald Ford. 1980, I campaigned for Ronald Reagan again. The Republican establishment in Pennsylvania said he can't win. They got behind George H.W. Bush. They were wrong on both accounts. Sometimes you have Republican candidates for president who are so powerful in and of their own personalities, their charisma, their positions, and so forth. It doesn't matter who they pick. That's Donald Trump. It didn't matter who Ronald Reagan picked. He was told, pick George H.W. Bush, unite the party. He didn't need to, but he did. And he won in 2 massive landslides having absolutely nothing to do with George H.W. Bush. And Donald Trump is poised to win bigly, assuming you and I and everybody we know get out and push hard. And it didn't matter and wouldn't matter who his pick was. Now, already they're trashing J.D. Vance. He was a never-Trumper. They point to 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, 2016 was a brutal primary. Ted Cruz, who I had supported, others had supported. But then the primary's over, and you support the nominee, in this case, Donald Trump, who has become a dear friend of mine, and vice versa. Just as Donald Trump early on in his career was a Democrat, fairly liberal, then he was part of the Reform Party, and then he became a Republican. Or Ronald Reagan, who was a New Deal Democrat, said the party left him and became the most conservative Republican president in history. And we can go on and on about our own family members and so forth and so on. So the media try and create the impression that, oh, look at this, J.D. Vance is a hypocrite. You know what's funny? Notice they never talk about Kamala Harris in that 2016 debate where she ripped the skin off of Biden on his racism. And he picked her. They don't bring that up. They're bringing up J.D. Vance's age. He's 39 years old. Only 2 years in the Senate. When Barack Obama ran for president, wasn't chosen as a vice president, he had 2 years in the Senate, a failed candidacy for the House of Representatives, a few years in the state Senate in Illinois, and before that he was basically a community rabble-rouser, an Alinskyite. He had no resume, nothing. Once again, the media, even some in our media, ignore them. Use your own head. I'm not a politician. I'm not part of the Trump campaign. I call things as I see them. We've had at least 8 years of a coordinated, systematic effort to dehumanize Donald Trump by the Democrat Party and their media and academia, day after day. And all throughout, I've been on the radio, and I've commented on it, and I've denounced it. We even reminded around here a few weeks ago, I even said about Joy Reid and her constant references to Hitler and Trump that I fear for Donald Trump. I worry about his well-being. And it's not the first time I said it. Now, there's not a direct corollary, not yet, between one and the other. But when it becomes part of the common vernacular, the common discussion, in a media that is 95, 98% Democrat Party surrogates, it becomes part of the media culture. It becomes a truism. This kind of fear-mongering and scaremongering, it has an impact on the psyche of a lot of people. I think I've led the effort here saying stop calling Trump Hitler. Stop saying he's going to imprison his political opponents. Stop saying he's going to have people executed. Stop saying he's going to destroy democracy. I've called out the individual reporters at CNN and MSNBC, on the New York Times and the Washington Post payroll. I'm calling them out all the time. The things that they say. And so I'm supposed to sit here, my first opportunity to speak to you since Saturday in the assassination attempt. Oh, my God. 1 centimeter, 2 centimeters, and Donald Trump would have been shot in the back of the right side of his skull and dead right there and then. How horrific that he turned his head, calling for his graphic. And yes, that's divine intervention. That's Hashem. That's God. Just imagine that. Terrible. Sickening. And we'll get into this. To watch Joe Biden yesterday give his speech about unity was pathetic. Why was it pathetic? For several reasons. Joe Biden has spent an entire career 50 years in Washington, D.C., destroying people's characters and smearing them. Whether it's Clarence Thomas or Sam Alito or Bob Bork, whether it was Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump, he's a very hateful, nasty individual. Early in his career, siding with the racists and the segregationists because he thought it was an opportunity for him. The things he said about jungles and interracial public schools are horrendous. Even since then, he has said many racist things. The media have given him a pass. Media have protected him. He didn't, during the course of that speech, ever take any responsibility as the leader of the nation and the Democrat Party for any of it. When the day before President Trump was shot, he reportedly told donors to put a bullseye on him. Obviously, he didn't mean to kill him or to have him assassinated, but when you use this kind of rhetoric, and when you give a speech like you did at Independence Hall a few years back, horrendous, with all the lighting and so forth, and when your campaign is focused almost exclusively that Donald Trump will destroy our democracy, that Donald Trump is a racist, when your surrogates are calling him Hitler, repeatedly, in the media, on MSNBC and CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, giving voice to these people, giving them platforms. The effort to dehumanize Donald Trump, as I've said now for years, to dehumanize him, was a strategic effort by the media, the Democrat Party, and their very choice of guests to comment on it, to dehumanize him, to dehumanize the tens of millions of people who support him. Hillary Clinton, it's been constant. Bernie Sanders, it's been constant. AOC, the list is infinite. But the number one person on that list is Joe Biden, who took no responsibility and didn't apologize. Instead, he lectures the nation. This is a very violent Democrat Party. We've talked about it here. Very violent. 2020. As that was going on, Democrats in the media, Democrats in the Democrat Party were either defending or downplaying what was taking place in our streets. The riots, the arson, the assaults. The entire Black Lives Matter movement, the Antifa movement, the smearing of police officers, local police in particular, rampant crime in our streets, violence everywhere. Since October 7th of last year, the virulent, Jew hatred, attacks on Jews, physical attacks on synagogues, on Hillels, on young kids wearing yarmulkes or the Star of David, or with Jewish names. Precious little was said by the Democrat Party leadership, just enough to get by. And the same with the Biden administration. slow to act, if they acted at all, with all the means they had provided by the Trump administration, prior administrations on hate crimes and so forth, the ability to deport people who are here on student visas, nothing. The ability to use the bully pulpit to condemn these universities and colleges, virtual silence. The relentless attack, vicious attack on Benjamin Netanyahu. Just like against Trump, just like against Bork, just like against Thomas, just like against Alito. It's a tactic. Target and character assassinate. That was Saul Alinsky. That was Vladimir Lenin. We know this is what was taking place. We talked about it as it was taking place. The fact of the matter is, no, we can't tie anything specifically to this 20-year-old murderer who murdered a wonderful patriot who was protecting his family. He was shot in the head. And the other two Trump supporters who are in critical condition, of which we know very little. The President of the United States, by the blink of an eyelash, almost was executed in front of the whole world. I'm not done. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, folks, we're living in unprecedented times. And September 18th could be a watershed moment. With President Trump's sentencing approaching, we're facing potential political upheaval, which could create some dangerous market and economic chaos. That's where gold and diversification come in. Gold has always been one of the ultimate safe havens in times of turmoil. And when it comes to gold, I only trust one company. I've dealt with many. That's Advantage Gold. They're a 5-star American company that I recommend to everyone. They're the experts in helping Americans protect their money with gold and silver using existing retirement savings with zero fees. So call Advantage Gold today at 800-900-8000 and they'll send you a free gold investment kit to help you get started. Tell them Mark Levin sent you to see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. Don't wait until September 18th. It's already here, folks. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit from Advantage Gold. That's 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. Always consult your financial tax professional. You know, on Freedom of the Press, I don't remember what year it was written, several years ago, lays out the case about this media. Democrat Party hates America, lays out the case about the Democrat Party. Let us be clear about something. Over the last 8 years or more, both have ratcheted up the dehumanization campaign against Donald Trump. They've done it purposely. They've done it intentionally. They've done it with the support of the corporations that own them. Comcast owns NBC and MSNBC. Warner Brothers owns CNN. Not a single effort has been made by any of these corporations to intervene in the reckless, violent rhetoric with references to genocidal mass murderers aimed at one man, Donald Trump. I'll be right back. Hi, this is Mark Levin, and I've got an urgent message that can't wait. September 18th is coming, and with it, President Trump's sentencing. We're staring down this barrel again of potential market chaos. The question isn't if there's going to be a fallout, but how much. In times of instability, many smart investors turn to gold as part of diversification. And when I think of gold, I think of Advantage Gold. These folks are true partners in helping Americans find financial stability. Advantage Gold's experts understand the connection between politics and economics, and they can navigate you through these crazy times using gold to help shield your hard-earned wealth. So call my trusted friends at Advantage Gold now at 800-900-8000. 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit. If you wait until September 18th, it might be too late. 800-900-8000 for your free investment kit. Tell them Mark Levin sent you to see if you qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. Always consult your financial and tax professional.
Yes, it's true that Mark Levin is the fastest growing radio show in America. The Mark Levin Show is on at 877-381-3811.
When you have a media that conducts itself for all to see and all to hear, can't now pretend that it wants unity when in fact it takes no responsibility for a damn thing it ever does. Nobody's been fired. Nobody. No mea culpas. None. Pathetic Jake Tapper. What's happening to our country? You are, you jerk. Again, no direct line. But they're destroying the civility of the nation. Sites like Mediaite, Media Matters. So obsessed with Trump day in and day out. Sites like the Drudge Report. Even now. Our friend Noah Pollock posts, Biden and Democrats keep saying that political violence is unacceptable, but they're lying. He writes, for the past 4 years, Antifa, Hamas supporters, and other leftist activists have routinely engaged in political violence. They carry out arson, looting, beatings, all kinds of crimes. They make our streets look like Gaza. And in blue jurisdictions, they have immunity. Democrats do not prosecute them. The Democrat-controlled Department of Justice and FBI could investigate their groups, their Democrat Party donors and activists, and shut them down tomorrow if they wanted to, but they don't want to. So he goes on, please do not judge Democrats on the ridiculous claims that, quote, political violence is unacceptable, unquote. Democrats very much enjoy the atmosphere of menace and intimidation that leftist street violence creates. No, judge Democrats on whether they put the perpetrators of organized political violence in jail. They do not. He says the left-wing street attacks have perpetrators have immunity in Democrat-controlled cities and states. What this means is very obvious. It is very obvious, is it not? Joe Biden was confronted in an interview by Lester Holt on NBC Nightly News, which will air later tonight. Take a listen. Cut 29, go.
Well, let's talk about the conversation this has started, and it's really about language, what we say out loud and the consequences of those. You called your opponent an existential threat on a call a week ago. You said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye. There's some dispute about the context, but I think you appreciate that
I didn't say crosshairs. I was talking about focus on. Look, the truth of the matter was, what I guess I was talking about at the time was there was very little focus on Trump's agenda.
Yeah, the term is bullseye.
It was a mistake to use the word. I didn't say crosshairs. I meant bullseye. I meant focus on him. Focus on what he's doing. Focus on his policies. Focus on the number of lies he told in the debate. Focus. I mean, there's a whole range of things that, look, I'm not the guy that said, I want to be a dictator on day one. I'm not the guy that refused to accept the outcome of the election. I'm not the guy who said that won't accept the outcome of this election automatically. You can't only love your country.
All right, that's enough. That's enough. That's enough. Let's see here. Here's Biden, September 2022, outside Independence Hall. Cut 7, go.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. That is a threat to this country. Equality and democracy are under assault. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They promote authoritarian leaders, and they fan the flames of political violence. We are not powerless in the face of these threats. We are not bystanders in this ongoing attack on democracy. MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies. We must be stronger, more determined, and more committed to saving American democracy than MAGA Republicans are to destroying American democracy. From darkness, the darkness of Charlottesville, of COVID, of gun violence, of insurrection, we can see the light. Light is now visible.
Media calling Trump Hitler. Hat tip Newsbusters. Cut 8, go.
When is the time to sound the alarm? When is the time to start saying, well, does this look like Germany in 1932?
Increasingly, Donald Trump is turning this nation into Nazi Germany.
If the party nominates Hitler, you're going to vote for him? I mean, that's what I don't get.
I want to start using the word fascist.
Yeah, he's a fascist.
And tendencies, many tendencies like Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
I said it, throw me off the air.
I hate comparing Trump to Hitler because Hitler could concentrate for more than 30 seconds and had normal-sized human hands.
You actually draw a line from Nazi Germany to the U.S. southern border. You remember that back then, boatloads of refugees were turned back.
Let's put up Charles Lindbergh and the 1940s Nazi sympathizers. They were also called Make America First.
Why do you think he uses the term America First, which is taken from history back when Nazi Germany was rising?
Language that he's using echoes language used in Nazi propaganda.
I'm sorry, is that straight out of Nazi Germany? And frankly, it could be straight out of Munich circa 1928.
That is exactly why Donald Trump is compared to Hitler.
It's methodology that Trump no doubt learned from any number of authoritarian leaders over the last 90 years. Ataturk, Franco, Mussolini, Stalin, and Hitler.
This is not a reach. I could go back and talk about Nazi Germany, and I do it without any concerns whatsoever. And if people can't start drawing the parallels, well, you're just stupid, or you have your head in the sand, or you're one of them.
Or the end of democracy. I'm not supposed to do this? No, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to be intimidated. I've said for years, enough of this. Enough of this. Focused on Donald Trump. You actually had people in the streets carrying flags with the swastika on it, talking about exterminating the Jews, demanding overthrowing the country, burning the American flag. And the condemnation is not heard anywhere except here. Nowhere. The rising violence. Cut 9, go.
Donald J. Trump presents a clear and present danger to our democracy.
This would be the end of America. If this is what we're going to be, this won't be a democracy. That's a monarchy. It was repugnant.
An actual Trump-led wannabe empire is the end of democracy.
A re-election of Donald Trump could mean the end of democracy.
When will America stop sleepwalking towards the end of democracy?
Right. One, can Donald Trump really win again? And two, will it really be the end of American democracy if he does? And my answer to both those questions was yes.
Increasingly, Donald Trump is turning this nation into Nazi Germany.
I hate comparing Trump to Hitler because Hitler could concentrate for more than 30 seconds.
I want to start using the word fascist.
Yeah, he's a fascist.
And tendencies, many tendencies like Adolf Hitler.
You don't have a president, as you said, talking about exterminating Latinos.
This is not a reach. I could go back and talk about Nazi Germany.
Right. Let's move on. From 2020, Democrats urging violence against Trump and you, his supporters. Cut 11.
Go to the Hill today. Get up and please get up in the face of some Congress people.
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about.
But Michelle always says that, when they go low, we go high. No. When they go low, we kick them.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
We'll also fight him and challenge him in every way that we can, in the Congress, in the courts, and in the streets and protests.
If the president does go ahead and fire Robert Mueller, we would have people take to the streets. I believe there would be widespread civil unrest.
You're in the arena, you got to be ready to take a punch. You got to be ready to throw a punch.
It would set off. It would set off a firestorm. I think it would be, not only on the Hill but in the streets. I really think that would be a bad thing to happen.
I think you need to go back and punch him in the face. I mean, the truth is this guy is bad for this country.
And what about Trump himself? How should he be treated? Hat tip X. Cut 10, go.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized up to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Look, as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
This way. That's it right there, pulling up.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
A Missouri state senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
If you think we're rallying now, you ain't seen nothing yet.
But of course, Biden, as the leader of the Democrat Party, has never tried to put out these fires of this rhetoric. He's led them. That's what he meant. Put a bullseye on Trump. Attack, attack. That's what he's done for 50 years, half a century in Washington, D.C. Now is not the time to pretend otherwise. He's never been the great uniter. Not once. He's had many opportunities. So he tries it again yesterday. Cut 3, go.
I want to speak to you tonight about the need for us to lower the temperature in our politics. And to remember, while we may disagree, we are not enemies.
So why don't you cut it out? Speech after speech. To donors privately that leak out, and publicly. With his usual line, it's not a joke, folks. I'm serious. Go ahead.
We're friends, co-workers, citizens. And most importantly, we're fellow Americans.
What bothered me most about this speech was how he rewrites his entire role as a politician, as a senator, as a vice president, a president, and a candidate. He excludes himself. Not once did he say, you know, even I have overstepped the bounds. Even I need to pull back from the rhetoric. But he never says that. He's positioning himself. He has the power to have the Democrats stand down. He has the power as president to put down the the violence against the Jews in the streets, but he never uses it. The things he has said about Donald Trump, the things he has said about Benjamin Netanyahu, the things that he has said about Clarence Thomas and Bob Bork and others are horrendous. Horrendous. And it's gotten hotter and meaner and worse as each day has gone by. The same media that lied to us about Biden's dementia is now out there saying, what's happening to America? You're happening to America. There's enough nuts out there. There's enough evil people out there. And you're aware of them. You know they exist. So why do you say the things you say, Jake Tapper? Dana Bash. We've talked about them on this program. George Stephanopoulos, Martha Raddatz, she takes the cake. And why do these media corporate executives, why don't they do something? Some kind of accountability. But there's none. Zero. There's a lot more. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You know, folks, we're living in unprecedented times. And September 18th could be a watershed moment. With President Trump's sentencing approaching, we're facing potential political upheaval, which could create some dangerous market and economic chaos. That's where gold and diversification come in. Gold has always been one of the ultimate safe havens in times of turmoil. And when it comes to gold, I only trust one company. I've dealt with many. That's Advantage Gold. They're a 5-star American company that I recommend to everyone. They're the experts in helping Americans protect their money with gold and silver using existing retirement savings with zero fees. So call Advantage Gold today at 800-900-8000 and they'll send you a free gold investment kit to help you get started. Tell them Mark Levin sent you to see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. Don't wait until September 18th. It's already here, folks. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit from Advantage Gold. That's 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. Always consult your financial tax professional. We only have a few minutes here. When we come back, I want to tell you about a call I received from President Trump about 30 minutes before he went on that stage. And I'll tell you what I can about the conversation I had with him yesterday. Life, Liberty, and Levin was obviously preempted Saturday as a result of the assassination attempt, so that's completely understandable. Sunday, it was never going to air because there was programming, as it is every 4 years, from the convention starting on Sunday. So all that was routine, just so you know. We'll be back this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I chose not to be in Milwaukee for one simple reason. I'm not interested in just interviewing a bunch of politicians. I'm sitting where you're sitting, observing what's taking place. People are calling me, no question about it. They want to talk. They want to come on. There'll be some of that. But I have found that if you're caught up in all that, it's very hard to do a good program. Turns out Rush Limbaugh felt the same way. He never went to these conventions. A lot of it is social and so forth, or want to be seen. I don't need to be seen. We're going to have the best coverage anywhere in the country right here behind this microphone. We'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. What the hell happened Saturday? Where were all the good guys? How does a 20-year-old, doesn't even have a military background, law enforcement background, proficient with rifles to a point, how does he evade the Secret Service, local and state law enforcement, get to the rooftop of a building, take a position with a long rifle, and nearly assassinate the former President of the United States and the future President of the United States, puts the bullet through a head of a father who instinctively jumps on his family, particularly his daughter, to save them because he hears the shots. Has the top of his head blown off. Two other individuals who we don't know anything about in critical condition. I hear people saying, I don't blame this, I do blame that, I don't. Well, I don't know how people know who to blame or who not to blame, but I do know this. The responsibility's at the top, the head of the Secret Service. If you run the most boring business on the face of the earth, and you have a manager whose underlings fail, or the manager, him or herself, fail, you remove them. Nobody ever gets fired in the bureaucracy. Nobody. The media are busy tonight trashing J.D. Vance. I don't agree with J.D. Vance on everything. Turns out he's a big supporter of Israel. The Jerusalem Post has a piece. He went and visited Israel in 2022. He said there's no stronger supporter of Israel than I. You don't hear that on TV. You just hear he's an isolationist. And, of course, you'll remember that last Friday he called into the program after I said, what's with this guy? He doesn't call in. Well, his people were upset, and he called in. You know, that shows some character, actually. But what do we know about the head of the Secret Service? Almost nothing. Why was she chosen? Who recommended her? Why did Biden appoint her? Now, these are real questions. We have a piece here. Butler, PA, Channel 11 News uncovered dramatic new details today in the moments leading up to the assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump. According to multiple law enforcement sources, Thomas Crooks was spotted by law enforcement, ready for this, on a roof nearly 30 minutes before shots were fired that injured Trump, killed a former fire chief, and injured two others in the crowd. Channel 11's Nicole Ford confirmed the Beaver County ESU team had 8 members at the rally, including snipers and spotters. According to Ford's sources, one of them noticed a suspicious man on a roof near the rally at 5:45 p.m., called it in, took a picture of the person. We've learned from our sources the person in that picture is, in fact, Thomas Crooks. We're told it's not clear if Crooks had a gun with him at that point. Well, when did he have? Of course he had it with him. It's a rifle. According to multiple sources, a law enforcement officer had also previously seen Crooks on the ground and called him in as a suspicious person with a picture prior to 5:45 p.m. That's 2 law enforcement officials who sought to alert, I guess, higher-ups. Our sources tell us an officer checked the grounds for Crooks at that point but did not see him where the first picture was taken. 26 minutes after the second picture, Crooks was taken by law enforcement and the information called in. 26 minutes later, shots were fired from the roof of the American Glass Research Building. Seconds later, a Secret Service sniper returned fire and killed Crooks, and kudos to him. What do you make of that? Then we have the leaks and the finger pointing. New York Post. Butler, PA. The Secret Service blamed local police for failing to secure the rooftop from which gunman Thomas Matthew Crooks attempted to assassinate former President Donald Trump, insisting it was outside the perimeter the federal agency was tasked with protecting. It was 130 yards from where the President of the United States was standing. That's outside the perimeter, Mr. Producer? What kind of perimeter do they have? 8 feet? Ladies and gentlemen, that's a little bigger than a football field. And everybody's correctly asking, how the hell does this punk get to the top of a building, the building that is closest to where the President of the United States is going to give a speech, and in fact does, without getting noticed? But he was noticed. You just heard this ABC, this local report that just came out, 2 local police officers. There's another report out that, in fact, one local police officer got to the roof, saw him, and then either jumped or tried to escape. I don't know all the facts around this. I'm telling you what we're learning. We'll have more specifics, I'm sure, in the days ahead. I also have reports here that the A-team, only part of the A-team, that is, the A-team of the Secret Service was there to protect Trump. That you had a number of members of the service who don't typically protect him because the others were called off to cover another event involving the First Lady. Then we have other reports saying that there had been requests in the past for more Secret Service protection, which was not granted. Now, we're going to need to figure this all out, obviously, but here's what I know. In a parallel situation, not an assassination attempt, but in terms of providing Secret Service resources, Robert Kennedy has gone publicly and said that he's asked for Secret Service protection 6 to 10 times. And he couldn't get it. The day after Trump is shot, he gets Secret Service protection. But why didn't he have Secret Service protection? What kind of a president? What kind of a secretary of DHS? What kind of the head of the Secret Service conduct themselves this way? His father was murdered, assassinated. He's a Kennedy. 2 of them were assassinated. He's a Kennedy. Care whether you like him or not. And he has to keep asking? Why? Buddy of mine said, well, he's not a serious candidate. Yes, he is a serious candidate. He's on numerous state ballots. Just because he's not a Republican or Democrat, so what? That doesn't change the threat. And why is it that information is just squeezing out a little at a time? Have you noticed that, Mr. Producer? The authorities know a lot more than they're telling us. There's no helicopter above. There's no drones. There's nothing. What is that all about? What the hell is that all? I mean, listen, I'm a pedestrian. But this is basic stuff, isn't it? The answer is yes. It's basic stuff. We don't have the most competent people on the highest levels of our government. Look at Afghanistan. Look at the withdrawal. Look at these generals. Milley and the other guy. After the fact, it's Biden's fault. Well, what about during the event? You said nothing? You didn't resign in protest? It cost people their lives? Afghanistan is now a terror haven, which will threaten us. After all we did there. And we gave the communist Chinese our forward base, an incredible base, as Donald Trump says, with all of our most advanced military equipment that now the Chinese are reverse engineering. These were pathetic generals. Pathetic decisions. Look at the border. The hell's in charge? Kamala Harris? And Mayorkas? These people they're pathetic. They don't know how to manage anything, and they don't want to manage anything. Look at the FBI, the heads of the FBI, the last 2 directors. Can't do better than that? Of course you could. There's too many irrelevant resume requirements that go into the selection of these people, whether it's DEI, but it's not just DEI. It's a buddy system. Oh, who knew Christopher Wray? Oh, Christy knew Chris. Oh, cool. Okay, great. And we can go down the list. The more powerful the federal government gets, the more ubiquitous. Like they can run our economy. They know how to run the automobile industry. They know how to do that. They don't, folks. If you want to see the biggest incompetent boobs in our society, most of them are in Washington. I am not prepared to trash the men and women of the Secret Service. But we do need to know by individuals who was responsible for what. Enough of the whitewashing, enough of the broad strokes. We need to know the specifics. But for Donald Trump turning his head to look at a graphic that he called for on a monitor, he would have been assassinated on Saturday. A slight turn of the head, or that bullet would have wound up in the back of the right side of his cranium. Right in front of us. That's how close it was. The bullet literally pierced his right ear. Can you imagine? And one poor man wasn't lucky enough, and 2 others are fighting for their lives. And the people in charge of protecting Donald Trump so far have not come forward to talk to we, the people. They'll have to at some point. So we hear the rhetoric. I barely touched the surface in the first hour. The Democrats and the media. We have an administration that is incompetent through and through. And Biden lectures you and me. MAGA. Any Trump supporter. This will never be fixed. Normal will never happen again until these big media corporations like Comcast and Warner Brothers take care of business. Until politicians are held to account for their failures, until the people that they appoint are held to account for their failures. And it's not good enough for the Secret Service to say, well, we were relying on local cops. The protection of a presidential candidate is on you. No excuses. None. The crowd at the Trump rally at Butler, Pennsylvania tells police there's someone on the roof. Cut 2, Mr. Producer. Go.
Yeah, someone's on top of the roof. Look. There he is right there. Right there. See him? He's laying down. See him?
Yeah, he's laying down.
And still I'm here with you fighting like hell to get a Senate.
What's happening?
And to make sure we take back the White House, because if we do, we're going to make America better than ever before. We're going to make it.
Yeah, look. There he is.
Because we have millions and millions of people in our country that shouldn't be here. Dangerous people. Criminals. We have criminals. We have drug dealers. We have people that should not be here.
Right on the roof.
It's much tougher than it happens.
You went right on the roof with that.
happen? How the hell does this happen? You had a BBC interview that was on the internet. I posted that on the social media. The guy saying, yeah, he was on the roof. We're trying to tell the cops are trying to tell anybody who will listen. There's a guy on the roof with a rifle. 30 seconds before he fired off a round, there's a guy on the roof with a friggin' rifle. Good God. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You've heard me say for a long time that cell phone service with Pure Talk can be about half the cost of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. You hear just $20 a month for unlimited talk, text, plenty of data, and you might be thinking, well, what's the catch? There's no way Pure Talk can offer a cell phone service that cheap. I say, just ask the thousands and thousands of my other listeners who've already switched. They're loving that they're on America's most dependable 5G network. They love Pure Talk's U.S. customer service and their selection of premium phones. So don't wait any longer. It's time to start supporting companies that share our values, like creating American jobs and supporting our veterans. It's time to switch your cell phone service to Pure Talk. Plus, with no contract and 30-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose. Go to puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/LEVIN, and you'll save 50% off your first month. Again, that's puretalk.com/LEVIN to start saving now on your cell phone plan. When we come back after the bottom of the hour, we're going to talk about the Appointments Clause. A very brave and courageous judge, Judge Aileen Cannon in Florida. I could tell. I want to talk to you about unsung heroes in that case. President Trump's lawyers. The lawyers who brought the case on behalf of Attorneys General Meese and Mukasey. In our little firm called Landmark Legal Foundation that has done this sort of thing for decades with very little fanfare. And the great new president of that organization, I'm the chairman, Pete Hutchison, Mike O'Neill and Matt Forays, senior vice presidents, and basically a team of fellows and interns, as well as bringing in the foremost expert on the planet on the Appointments Clause and a fantastic litigator. When Judge Cannon accepted Landmark's brief and offered Landmark, along with the Attorney General Counsel and along with President Trump's counsel, to argue the point on the Appointments Clause. We won today. It is a massive victory for the Constitution and the future of the country, and obviously for President Trump. And I want to remind you that there were a conga line of individuals, Bill Barr, former federal prosecutors, on and on and on, telling you that was a slam dunk case. And the reason they say things like this is they don't litigate at the appellate level, but certainly not at the district court level the way we do. And it was never a slam dunk case. There were a host of motions that had to be and were filed that the government had to overcome. You've heard me say for a long time that cell phone service with Pure Talk can be about half the cost of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. You hear just $20 a month for unlimited talk, text, plenty of data, and you might be thinking, well, what's the catch? There's no way Pure Talk can offer a cell phone service that cheap. I say, just ask the thousands and thousands of my other listeners who've already switched. They're loving that they're on America's most dependable 5G network. They love Pure Talk's U.S. customer service and their selection of premium phones. So don't wait any longer. It's time to start supporting companies that share our values, like creating American jobs and supporting our veterans. It's time to switch your cell phone service to Pure Talk. Plus, with no contract and 30-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose. Go to puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/LEVIN, and you'll save 50% off your first month. Again, that's puretalk.com/LEVIN to start saving now on your cell phone plan.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
Michael O'Neill is a senior official at the Landmark Legal Foundation. I've known him for decades. He's a dear friend. And Michael and Matt and the president of Landmark, Pete, and two other lawyers that Mike will mention, filed a fantastic brief, argued the case in Florida on the appointments clause, as did lawyers for Attorneys General Meese and Mukasey, as did President Trump's lawyers, and they won the day. Mike, how are you, buddy?
I'm well, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing great. First of all, you used probably the top expert in the world on the appointments clause. What is that gentleman's name?
Certainly, Seth Tillman, and he is a guru on this. He and Josh Blackman. Josh Blackman's a constitutional law professor in Texas.
And by the way, let me just say, both of those men have been on the show, and they're both absolutely brilliant. Go ahead.
Yeah, the foremost experts on this issue, and Judge Cannon, to her immense credit and her bravery, accepted amicus briefs on behalf. We, along with Josh Blackman and Seth Tillman, filed an amicus brief. She accepted it, and we were able to posit arguments arguing about the unconstitutionality of this appointment of Jack Smith. And as you just said, she accepted briefs from former Generals Mukasey and Ed Meese, and of course credit to the attorneys for President Trump, who also argued the impropriety of this appointment.
What impact specifically did Landmark's brief have? Does she cite it? She wrote over 90 pages. It's an extraordinary opinion. It's like a law review decision.
Right. It's an incredibly sober and well-reasoned decision. Now, we offered an alternative argument. We offered an argument where we posited that the office of the special counsel was not a continuing office. It didn't exist in a continuing manner, and therefore he couldn't function as he was purporting to function. He couldn't function as a U.S. attorney, exercise these sorts of powers. Now, she does address it. She didn't accept it, but she addresses our argument. She says that the other arguments, particularly the constitutionality and the statutory arguments, were really the ones that drove home this issue. But she does address our argument. I think it was important. What's important to do in these amicus briefs that we file is to give alternative arguments and to press the issue. You can't always understand that the litigants are going to advance these aggressive, novel arguments in every instance. So what we want to do at Landmark and what we wanted to do is present an alternative argument, and we gave her the opportunity to do just that.
So she basically says, look, violates the appointments clause. He's not an inferior official because the Department of Justice didn't have any statutory authority, whether they issue a regulation or rule or not. Not a constitutional official because he was not submitted to the Senate and the confirmation process. And there was no budget that was passed by the Congress to provide for this non-existent office. That's pretty much the three things she said, correct?
Absolutely. And it's important to talk about this. You said that it was 93 pages. This is an incredibly sober and well-reasoned decision. You're going to have all these armchair lawyers who probably don't even read the opinion, for heaven's sakes. You look at X and you see these flash decisions or these flash opinions, and it's clear that these folks haven't even bothered reading the opinion. You have this well-reasoned where she engages in this really she utilizes these sophisticated tools of statutory construction to ultimately conclude that the appointment of Jack Smith is improper. And, you hear these people say, well, she discounted this, she discounted that. She devotes pages and pages of her opinion into analyzing these statutory provisions at play. Again, she goes not only to the text and the plain meaning of these statutes, she looks at the historical context, where they fall within the United States Code. It's a really incredibly well-reasoned decision. And what's really important, Mark, is that she took her time with this. She didn't rush. She held multiple days of hearings on this particular motion. She issued a very sober, extensive opinion. She didn't just rush through in an outcome determinative manner. She weighed the issues accordingly and did her due diligence. At one point in her opinion, Mark, she's reviewing a particular case, U.S. versus Nixon, and she actually says she reviewed every single brief filed in the Supreme Court case, every single opinion, every single brief, every piece of paper that was filed in this to determine the propriety of the applicability of that particular case. It's a really great decision.
And the gentleman who argued the case for Landmark, for us, he indicates that, in fact, she did cite the Landmark brief on several occasions in the brief. Did you catch that?
Yeah, she cites it. There's this issue called the de facto officer issue, and she cites a landmark brief there. She talks about it in context. Professor Blackman was able to provide some historical context through oral arguments, and she also refers to those issues that Professor Blackman raised. So there are multiple instances in this opinion where she talks about the brief that we filed.
And I'm reading some of the news reports, and you're exactly right. These reporters haven't even read the case. They basically say that she's reversed years and years of practice and so forth and so on.
Mm-hmm.
She's not there to rule on years and years of practice, is she? She's there to rule on what is presented to her as a judge, correct?
Exactly. And the immensity, she understands the enormity of this situation. You have an individual in Jack Smith who, as you said, and you said repeatedly, that he is not subject to any kind of oversight. He was never subject to an appointment like every other U.S. attorney, even though he's exercising powers well in excess of any U.S. attorney in the country, and yet he was never subject to any kind of confirmation process. As you've pointed out in the past, Mark, he's not subject to impeachment. That means the House and the Senate can't remove him if he's acting ultra vires or acting unconstitutionally. He's not subject to any kind of supervision from the Attorney General. And this is an important story. This is an important point that was actually hammered home a little bit in oral arguments. Judge Cannon actually asked the attorney for the special counsel, said, can you provide us any instances where the Attorney General has actually exercised supervisory authority over special counsel Jack Smith? And they refused to do that. The regulations, the DOJ regulations, provide no instances where the AG, the Attorney General, has any kind of authority and supervisory capacity. It's utterly deficient. This individual is...
Let me underscore the point you're making here. Let's slow down just a second. What you're saying is he's acting like an independent counsel, even though they claimed he's nothing more than an inferior appointee reporting to the Attorney General. And when the judge said, okay, can you give me any examples? They didn't. Correct?
Exactly
Okay.
right. Exactly right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, here's the problem. We have a constitutional construct that's set up. The Appointments Clause was put there historically, and it was debated at great length at the Constitutional Convention. That's discussed in the Federalist Papers. And what? Well, they didn't want this executive. They created the presidency to have all this enormous power, where they could appoint friends and this, that, and the other, and no say-so by Congress. But on the other hand, they didn't want Congress to have all this enormous power where they could obstruct this new executive position they're creating from actually getting anything done. And so they created this Appointments Clause. And it's very specific. It can't be clear. Look, there's certain types of officials you got to send to the Senate that has to confirm that individual. And if they're inferior positions, Congress has to pass a statute and give the authority to the president or this agency or that agency to do it. Isn't it also true, Michael O'Neill, that when it comes to passing a statute, giving a cabinet secretary the power to make such appointments, that Congress has done that for several departments, but has specifically excluded the Department of Justice?
Exactly. Congress knows what to do. And there's this statement: the Congress doesn't hide elephants in mouse holes. And Congress knows what to do. If they want to convey this authority to the Attorney General, you don't have to look in Section 515 or Section 533 and parse the language and try to find this imaginary authority. It's just not there. And again, I refer anybody to read this opinion. 93 pages where page after page she engages in this sophisticated statutory textual analysis, and she can't find that authority.
So the bottom line now is this doesn't just affect the so-called documents case. Mm-hmm. This ruling affects the January 6th case, and now Judge Chutkan has to figure out what to do about this ruling. Isn't that correct?
I think so. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, she says at her point that he is functioning ultra vires. He is functioning extra constitutionally. He has no authority to do this, and everything he's done, everything he's done has been improper. Therefore, none of this has occurred from a legal constitutional standpoint.
So that leaves the possibility that if the Department of Justice wanted to, they could start all over again, I suppose. But that raises a lot of practical litigation issues, doesn't it? In terms of all this stuff that was done ultra vires by the federal government. Can they, in fact, use it? So for all intents and purposes, if the Department of Justice wants to rekindle this case, they're going to have a hell of a problem, aren't they?
Absolutely. They have to start from square one and completely begin again. So the question here, of course, is whether this is what's going to happen next with it, and whether they're going to try to subject this to a stay on an emergency appeal. We'll see.
Well, good luck. Number one, the Supreme Court's on vacation.
Yeah.
Number two, when they come back, they're not going to be in any hurry, just like they weren't in any hurry with the immunity case. And number three, I suspect the Supreme Court's going to agree with Judge Cannon, don't you?
I think so. I mean, you saw in the Trump immunity case, you saw Justice Thomas in his concurrence address this very issue. And I think, and if you read the opinion, Judge Cannon references Justice Thomas's concurrence.
Mm-hmm. I don't even know what leg the government has to stand on. You know, I read the decision. Mm-hmm. I'm aware of our arguments. I'm aware of the other arguments. They really don't have a leg to stand on, do they?
Yeah, exactly. I think so. And, you know, it just shows the arrogance of the Department of Justice that they could pull this individual who was outside of the government, a private individual, and vest him with this enormous power. Essentially, what's he trying to do, Mark? He's trying to disenfranchise tens of millions of people. And to have this enormous power in this, just pull some private guy who's never been subject to any kind of confirmation or anything is really beyond the pale.
Mm-hmm. No oversight, no authority, no basis constitutional, statutory for his appointment, and yet Merrick Garland appoints him because he wanted to appoint him, right? He wanted this guy in particular because the Deputy Attorney General, who's really the invisible hand behind this department, knew him, liked him, and wanted him because he's a hunter, isn't he?
Yeah, inside baseball, but it's come back around, and it doesn't look like it's working out for them, does it?
Now, it's interesting. This guy's a screw-up. He did grave damage to the former governor of Virginia, Bob McDonnell, by basically rewriting a statute. The obstruction statute, he basically rewrote with the rubber stamp of Judge Chutkan and this three-court panel in the circuit court in D.C. with two Biden appointees who probably spent about 5 minutes writing their opinion. The Supreme Court takes it up and reverses them. Then on the immunity thing, he's in a hurry. And don't you find it interesting also, Mike, that all the legal analysts on TV originally said that the immunity argument was ridiculous that Trump was making? There was only one who said, wait a minute, that's not true. Or that the documents case is a slam dunk and they're going into the substance. Wait a minute. There are motions to be filed when you litigate, whether at the district court, even at a circuit court. There are motions to be filed. You got to get through. You know, you're running a race. You got to jump the barriers that are put in front. And all these analysts are wrong, and yet none of them confess to it. You see it, don't you?
Absolutely. The arrogance is astounding to me, and this disrespect for the due process and the rule of law. When you're accused, think about the full force and power of the federal prosecutorial process being waged upon you. Think about it on me or on President, the millions. What have they spent? How many millions, tens of millions of dollars that this individual has spent trying to prosecute Donald Trump? And the arrogance. And until you hold these individuals accountable, until you have a judge who's going to give a fair... Now, let's talk. Judge Cannon was equally hard on all parties here. She gave due process and due consideration to everybody. She was fair and she was open. There was no prejudice here. In oral arguments, she was just during the hearing, she was just as hard on the lawyers for Trump as she was on the lawyers for the special counsel, as she was on the amicus for our position, as she was on the amicus on the other side. She was sober and incredibly brave, and I think all credit to her. Think of the enormous pressure she's under here and how brave this decision is to respect the rule of law and to respect our Constitution.
Well, good job to you guys and to the outside lawyers at Landmark Legal Foundation. Good job to Attorneys General Misa Mukasey. That's how serious this matter was. Two former Attorney General intervened in this case, and to their lawyers, their wonderful professors, and Donald Trump's lawyers. And I think lawfare is sucking its last breath, don't you?
I agree. I think it's dying a good death. Let's put it that way.
All right, brother. That's Landmark Legal Foundation. What's your website if people want to check it out?
Yep, landmarklegal.org. Landmarklegal.org. Thanks, Mark.
Let's put that up there, Mr. Producer, on all the social sites, and you can read all about them. I'm so proud of you guys. You have no idea. Thanks, Mike. God bless. Take care.
God bless.
And by the way, all those hosts and lawyers now celebrating the judge's decision, Judge Cannon on the appointments clause. Where the hell were you before the decision? It's pretty lonely up there. You know that, Mr. Producer? But we're used to it. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
You've heard me say for a long time that cell phone service with Pure Talk can be about half the cost of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. You hear just $20 a month for unlimited talk, text, plenty of data, and you might be thinking, well, what's the catch? There's no way Pure Talk can offer a cell phone service that cheap. I say, just ask the thousands and thousands of my other listeners who've already switched. They're loving that they're on America's most dependable 5G network. They love Pure Talk's U.S. customer service and their selection of premium phones. So don't wait any longer. It's time to start supporting companies that share our values, like creating American jobs and supporting our veterans. It's time to switch your cell phone service to Pure Talk. Plus, with no contract and 30-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose. Go to puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/LEVIN, and you'll save 50% off your first month. Again, that's puretalk.com/LEVIN to start saving now on your cell phone plan. It's just important, you know. You got a lot of people saying a lot of things to you, a lot of people who've held important positions in the past. A lot of commentary that goes on in the media today. And you folks know how to discern this. There are people who talk a lot, they sound good, they're often wrong, and they move right on to the next subject. And then right on to the next. There's simply no accountability. And by accountability, I don't mean throwing people in prison or punishing. They never come back and say I was wrong or I made a mistake or something. They just don't do it. They just don't do it. This appointment clause issue, you and I have talked about this now for a long, long time, here, everywhere. I did it on Levin TV. I did it here. I did it on several Fox shows. Same with the immunity. I'm listening to all these people. They're going, no, Trump's demanding. I said, it doesn't matter. You don't have to give Trump everything he's demanding. But they're right, fundamentally. You never even got to the substance of the documents case because of the appointments clause. This is how I have litigated my whole life. This is how Landmark Legal Foundation has done it. This is how the professors who represented Meese and Mulcahy, both of whom I work with, one of whom is a close friend. He was special assistant to Meese when I was chief of staff to Meese. This is what we do. And so it gets a little frustrating when we're trying to point these things out and we're overwhelmed by numbers, 3 or 4 other lawyers, and that sort of thing. We'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. You know, I guess my middle name is Research, but I found a Washington Post story, and it was titled The Hitlerification of Donald Trump. That's right. The Hitlerification of Donald Trump. It goes on and on how Donald Trump's comments and words and so forth and so on basically deserves the moniker of Hitler. I have a question for Comcast. First of all, folks, how many of you have Comcast cable in your home? In many communities, it's a monopoly. It's based in Philadelphia unless they moved. It's a conglomerate. It owns NBC and it owns MSNBC. It has a board of directors, very, very wealthy people, has a CEO and a president, has a chairman of the board. Isn't it time that these individuals take some responsibility for what they're doing to the country? How does Joy Reid retain her position as a primetime host on MSNBC? What was it, Mr. Blue? A week or so ago when she kept referring to Trump as Hitler multiple times in the same paragraph? And I posted it. I said, enough is enough. When is this going to stop? When is this going to stop? I don't get the sense it ever will. I think we'll have a couple of week, maybe a couple month breather, and then they'll be back at it. For Jake Tapper to go on TV and ruminate about what's wrong with America, he's wrong with America. He's a propagandist. As far as Biden goes, notice the Democrat Party isn't talking about brooming him out anymore. Biden has used this occasion not to unite America. He takes responsibility for nothing. In fact, all the examples he gave during that pathetic speech were to attack the Republicans or somebody else. Listen, America. Listen, folks. This is who Joe Biden is. He doesn't know any other way. He's a smear merchant. He accuses the entire state of Georgia of wanting to suppress the black vote because it wants to update and upgrade its voting system. Sick. Absolutely sick. If you oppose his border policies, you're xenophobic. If you oppose abortion on demand, you're anti-woman. He thinks in tidbits and he speaks in tidbits. And his accusations are just horrendous. And to attack all of MAGA. You know what MAGA is? It's conservatism. That's what it is. Make America great again. That phrase was actually used by the Reagan-Bush campaign in 1984. They were the first ones to use it. It's conservatism. That's all. But they hate us. Because we want to protect our institutions. We want to protect our liberties, individualism, our private property rights, our businesses. We want to protect women's sports. We don't think women should be in the draft. And on and on and on. We stand in the way, so they try and beat us down. Verbally. You look at January 6th. We've had 1,000 January 6ths since January 6th. In cities across the country. In colleges and universities. The brutality. We've never seen anything like this in America, the kind of Jew hatred and anti-Semitism. And Biden's rhetoric about Netanyahu and the state of Israel and the blood libels have fueled this. They fueled it. Martha Raddatz is one of the most horrendous reprobates in the media. You might recall Obama went to her wedding, such as it was. But there are very bad people in the media. She's one of them. And Stephanopoulos? Why is he in the media at all? But here they are on this week. This Sunday. Yesterday. Cut 14, go.
Martha Raddatz. And Martha, I know you've traveled around the country talking to voters in our deeply divided nation right now.
They talk like they're just observers in our deeply divided nation right now. Why are we so divided? Donald Trump was not allowed to be president. They went after him before he was president. They went after him when he was president-elect. They went after him when he was president. They used the instrumentalities of our intelligence services, of our federal law enforcement. They worked with the media. The media worked with them to push lies about Russia collusion, about lies about a dossier. They gave each other awards. They don't even take a step back. They don't even have any sense of circumspection. They don't look in the mirror. They just keep going on because they're fanatics. They're ideologues. Joe Biden is trying to turn out the vote by creating hate, jealousy, victimization. Unfortunately, that's the makeup of the Democrat Party. That's its structure. It is a loose collection of groups for which They and the government create identities. All right, blacks and whites and Hispanics and poor and rich. Always inciting anger and jealousies. Always. Terrible. Anyway, go ahead.
Underlying division in this country.
It certainly is, George, and I'm sure that will probably continue.
It always bothers me, and I don't care who does it, when reporters are interviewing reporters. That's not news, ladies and gentlemen. That's to reinforce a narrative. Reporters interviewing reporters. Since when is that news, for God's sakes? It's all commentary. It's all propaganda. So George Stephanopoulos is interviewing Martha Raddatz on ABC This Week. Go ahead.
Saw President Trump raise his right hand, as John just described, and we've seen those pictures. But we could also see him say what I believe was fight. That was his first instinct. And this is a country divided. This is a country, we saw the violence yesterday, the horrific violence yesterday. And we've seen it in places. And we've also seen this morning, we've heard President Trump say he wants the country to come together, to be united. But others are directly pointing the finger at President Biden with, of course, no evidence that he incited.
No evidence he incited anything. But Trump did, he's putting his fist in there and saying fight. And of course, when it came to January 6th, he told people to peacefully assemble. And apparently that was code for insurrection and violence. You see what I mean? These people don't learn because they don't have to. Martha Raddatz should have her ass kicked off the network to never be seen on TV again. George Stephanopoulos should never have been on TV. He was head of the war room for Clinton, going after women. Sick. Jake Tapper is a through-and-through Democrat. He worked for a Democrat congresswoman. He worked for Handgun Control Inc. He can't conceal that anymore. And all their love for the Hamas statistics and the blood libels against Israel and Netanyahu, it is constant. It is endless. By the way, we're going to have the great Brent Bozell on here in about 5 minutes. Nobody tracks this better than he. Cut 15, Mr. Producer. Go.
You point out those statements from J.D. Vance and Vivek Ramaswamy. Of course, President Trump and his supporters have contributed to this violent rhetoric as well.
No. See what I mean? The level of violence coming out of the Democrat Party apparatus that we've seen since October 7th, that we saw on 2020, the tolerance for crime and violence that we see in Democrat-run cities by their Soros prosecutors and their Soros mayors, there's nothing comparable to that, America. The activist judges, Democrats, who allow these criminals back on the street so they commit crimes again, they take no responsibility for who they are and what they're doing and their ideology. None. The Hamas wing of the Democrat Party in the House and the Senate. The Marxists in the Democrat Party in the House and the Senate. We don't have that in the Republican Party. Look, I'm a conservative. I'm a member of the Republican Party. That's the entity through which we try and influence and advance our agenda. But the Democrat Party is different, as I've said over and over again. It seeks monopoly control. And in order to get that, it must defeat the institutions. It must, and it will, attack the Supreme Court. One of the things that Biden said that's not being reported is he's told Democrats on Capitol Hill that he's got a plan for the Supreme Court. What do you mean you have a plan for the Supreme Court? A plan for the Supreme Court? I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Welcome back, America. We have our buddy Brent Bozell, founder, CEO of Media Research Center, Newsbusters. Brent, what do you make of the media now acting like they're innocent, like they're analysts, like they're objective? The violence is just growing and growing, and their contribution to it is massive. It's major. And then they give us lectures about what's happening to the country, or they start pointing the finger at Trump and the Republic. They're never going to learn, are they?
No, and let's start here, Mark. First, enough of the lectures from President Biden. I thought his performance, and it was a performance, the other night was disgraceful. I don't need lectures from him. It's not conservatives who are doing this. It is he and his allies who are doing this. And so, physician, heal thyself before any lectures are given. Okay, on to the media. This is a consequence. I want to go back in history a little bit, Mark, and I think you're going to appreciate this. In 2005, we had the Oklahoma City bombings. The Murrah building was blown up in Oklahoma City. So many people died. After that bombing, Brian Gumbel went on the air on NBC and blamed Rush Limbaugh by name. Talked about his responsibility. That was echoed by Bob Schieffer on CBS. That was echoed by Sam Donaldson on ABC. That was echoed by David Broder in the Washington Post. So did the LA Times. The best one came from Time Magazine. They called conservative talk radio, your industry, the unindicted co-conspirators in that terrorist attack. Okay, Mark Levin, if that is good for the goose, how about this for the gander? I accuse them now of being co-conspirators in the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. I accuse them of fomenting such hatred in America that somebody finally acted on the untold numbers of accusations that democracy was coming to an end under this faux Adolf Hitler, Donald Trump. I accuse them now of being unindicted co-conspirators.
And they'll say, you have no evidence to tie this killer to them. But they create an environment of hate, an environment of violence, and it's been going on, and it just gets more and more and more intensified, does it not?
No, it's very true. And look, conservatives, there's a lot of angst that conservatives have about Joe Biden and the far left. But on your radio show, you don't entertain the kind of discussions you hear on Joe Scarborough's show every day. Isn't it telling, Mark? Isn't it telling that MSNBC could not trust its own anchors this morning to have them on the air? They couldn't trust Joe Scarborough and Mika not to say something that was purely incendiary. They couldn't trust their own staff. What does that tell you about how out of control the media have gotten?
My problem here, though, and I'm sure it's yours as well, they don't do anything about it. I mean, MSNBC is owned by Comcast. CNN is owned by, the hell was it? Warner Brothers, I believe. Whatever it is.
Yep.
These executives, they have boards of directors, they have investors, they have staff and so forth. I mean, Joy Reid has been calling Donald Trump Hitler incessantly for years, including about 10 days ago. And there she is. She's in prime time.
Yes. Nothing's
done. Nobody's fired.
No, these corporate boards, look, I'm going to say the same thing about them. I'm not going to play nice on this one. They're also unindicted co-conspirators in this. They also allowed this to happen. The news media is the only industry I know of where management does not control its employees. The management, the owners of these corporations have no interest in controlling their news outlets whatsoever. Okay, if that's fine, then take responsibility for what happens thereafter. And here it is. I would say to the Comcast and all these companies, you share in this responsibility. You share in the responsibility of so poisoning the political landscape that somebody acted on it and came within a fraction of a centimeter of blowing President Trump's head off.
So frightening, and they don't.
It is. And Mark, yeah. Is it over? Is it over? Is it going to stop? No.
You're right.
These people have such a hatred for this man. It's not going to stop. They're going to catch the worst for a few days, but I guarantee you within a couple of weeks, they'll be right back where they dropped off.
Look, J.D. Vance wasn't my first choice, but he's a good man. He'll do fine. The fact is, Donald Trump can pick whomever he wants. He's a juggernaut, right? Don't you agree with that? It really almost doesn't matter in that respect. Okay, fine. They're trashing him personally tonight, the media. Trashing him personally. Oh, he's going to be, basically, he's going to be the negative guy, the hitman for Trump. Oh, look what he said about Trump. Well, look what Kamala Harris said about Biden. So they take things that are actually in politics typical. They try and make them extraordinary. And now they're trashing this guy left and right. They don't want to debate on ideas and issues. They never do they, Brent Bozell?
No, I wouldn't have a problem. I wouldn't have a problem with them playing hardball with J.D. Vance or any other VP choice on the Republican side, so long as they executed their jobs in the exact same way when it came to the Democrats, which they won't do. I can't recall a single tough story ever done on Kamala Harris when she was running for president. I can't recall a single tough story about Joe Biden when he was the VP nominee.
How about Obama?
They just have a double standard on this.
All right, don't hang up. We have a hard break. We're here with our buddy Brent Bozell, an expert on the American Pravda, I call her, American Al Jazeera, quite frankly. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin, the research arm of conservative media. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
Here at Brent Bozell, Media Research Center, Newsbusters, Tom Winter, NBC News. Maybe the shooter might have targeted Trump for not being conservative enough. Frank Figliuzzi, whatever. Also NBC national security analyst. If you'll have protesters in Milwaukee with presumably people who are anti-Trump, can you imagine people who think in their head the answer is to seek revenge for today's events? Margaret Brennan, Samantha Vinograd, foreign policy commentator, CBS News Saturday, who worry about right-wing retaliatory violence. So they don't report, Brent Bozell, on what's in front of their eyes, what they're hearing with their ears, what's taking place, the news. They always have to put some left-wing spin on it. They can't just tell us what's taking place and how it's taking place. Isn't that about the way this media work now?
Yeah, I was watching ABC, changing channels. That's the only reason I was watching it. But I came across the conversation between George Stephanopoulos and Martha Raddatz. And they're analyzing the situation in a deep elitist way. And she said with that smarmy elitist voice of hers, well, I'm paraphrasing, well, let's look at some of the things that Donald Trump has said. And they start pulling quotes, which their research department has quickly pulled out for them, for things that Donald Trump has said that were of a caustic nature, including the statement about the bloodbath, which Martha Raddatz knew full well, and George Stephanopoulos knew full well they were taking it out of context. They knew full well they were doing this. And at the end of it, reading off all these quotes, what was she saying? She was saying, Mark, on national television, she didn't say it, but her statement was he had it coming. She was blaming him for what happened. So she was saying this man had an attempted assassination coming to him. If that isn't, Mark, if that isn't hatred, what is hatred? I don't understand it.
Does anybody really believe, Brent Bozell, that their hate for Trump and his supporters have changed? Does anybody really believe these people are circumspect? Look how they lied about Biden's senility, his dementia. And now on a dime, they're absolutely silent about it. Not one word. Instead, now he's the poser for unity. He's never been a man of unity. He was a man of the segregation and racism. He's been a man who has said and done virtually anything for personal profit and power. But these people aren't going to change in any respect, are they?
No, and what's going to happen is this. When Biden goes on the campaign trail, he is going to go back to his old nasty Joe self. He is a nasty politician. No one's going to call him out for it, but every reporter out there is going to be following every single word that Donald Trump says. And the moment they can hit the record button with him saying anything of a confrontational manner is going to be national news. Here he goes again. This is why it happened. So they're going to be in damage mode. They're in spin control mode for themselves. And I don't know that the media ever have been in this position where the country is looking at them and pointing a finger at them. I don't think this has ever happened before, Mark. So they are going to go out of their way to try to deflect and blame it back on Trump.
We had a lecture also from Jake Tapper yesterday, who's trashed Netanyahu, trashes Israel, trashes Trump, has said some of the most heinous things about Trump and MAGA supporters, who has a long lineage of Democrat Party activism. And there's something troubling in the American soul. They project onto the American people. They project. Of course there's evil out there. There's always been evil out there. That's why you and I support law enforcement and the rule of law and a real justice system, not Soros prosecutors. But putting that aside, like Biden, they take no responsibility or accountability for any of the vile, hateful crap that comes out of their mouths.
No, this is the arrogance. This is the arrogance of the blue blood, silver spoon, Ivy League elites who do believe that they have every right to say everything they have to say and they want to say, but are accountable for nothing that happens as a consequence of their actions. They have played this deflection game forever and ever and ever, but now there's a bullet that almost took a man's head off. And that, and there has to be this national conversation about the responsibility that the media have for these actions, for so poisoning the public conversation today that somebody, and Mark, how do we know it's not going to happen again? How do we know that somebody is, look, Mark, let me say something that is a dirty little secret we all know. There were millions upon millions of people who said 2 days ago, if only that bullet had been 1 inch to the right. And you know it, and I know it. That is exactly what they're thinking.
You're right. You are right. Remember when Gabby Giffords was shot and the judge was killed and others were shot, how quickly they tried to blame Sarah Palin, Michael Savage, and me? I'm going, me? Yes. The hell did I have to do with this? But especially Sarah Palin, because the ads she had with a target that had nothing to do with targeting anybody.
Right. And it turns out that the person who shot the congressman was a left winger.
Was a radical left wing kook.
Yes. Where was the responsibility placed on Democrats for that? Where was the responsibility placed on Democrats for the Scalise shooting? Where was the responsibility placed on how about the SPLC for having the hate map and having somebody act on their hate map and take a gun and shoot a guard and try to kill the staff at the Family Research Council? Where's the national conversation on the responsibility of the left and the things that they're doing today? You don't have conservatives roaming the streets in cities like Antifa, attacking people. You don't have conservatives doing $1.2 billion worth of damage all over the country as they set America aflame in the summer of 2020. You don't have any of that taking place where conservatives are concerned. Liberals do it because they know the media will not hold them to account, because at the end of the day, they sympathize with it. They sympathize with the radical left in America. I hate to be so blunt about this on your show, Mark, but I feel that way. I feel very passionate about this tonight. There has to be an accounting.
Listen to Jamie Gangel, CNN correspondent, CNN yesterday, about Donald Trump when the Secret Service is moving him into the vehicle and he has his fist in the air and he says, "Fight, fight, fight." Cut 20, go.
I do want to say there was one thing that when I watched the tape I found odd because of all of the heated rhetoric. And that is that after he was hit, former President Trump got up and said, "Fight, fight, fight." I think what we're hearing from people is that's not the message that we want to be sending right now. We want to tamp it down.
Does this sound like somebody who is compassionate or sympathetic for what just took place? Brent Bozell. I mean, the man gets up. He's bleeding in the ear. He just missed being assassinated. He puts his fist into the air. He's trying to reassure the audience, his supporters, fight, fight, fight. In other words, don't allow this to stand. You know, do your thing, vote, organize, that kind of thing. And it's like cold-blooded. I don't think that's the message we want to hear right now. That's sick.
Three magic words: hearing from people. She was hearing from people. The only people she was hearing from was her own production staff. If you talk to people who were in that audience, do you think a single person shared her sentiment in the thousands of people who were there? Nobody shared. They adored the fact that the president stood up. Mark, if Barack Obama had been had been a victim of an attempted assassination plot, and he had been nicked on the ear, and he'd gone down, and he'd gotten up and waved his fist and said, "Fight, fight, fight." Do you think that Jamie Gangel would be denouncing him?
No, they hate Trump. They just hate this man. It doesn't matter what he says and what he does, and I do agree that after a period of relative quiet, it'll all be back once again. And you're also right. They'll seize on something he says to say, see, he really didn't mean it. Nothing's changed. And then the brass knuckles are on again, led by the media. Yeah. All right, my friend.
Especially if you see the poll numbers. If the poll numbers move in the direction they don't want, they're not going to stop. They're going to come back.
And now, what do you think? You think they're going to stop for good this stuff about Biden needs to go? I mean, they hit the brakes on this pretty hard, didn't they?
Well, look, I hate to be a Democrat today. I mean, what are they going to do? George Clooney's not going to... No, I'm simply saying that where Biden is concerned, that the Democrats are in a whole heap of trouble right now, because I think that they have, at the end of the day, I think they don't have an alternative to Joe Biden. That's been the problem all along. They don't have an alternative. And all the polling shows that everyone is testing even worse than he's testing. So you've got people who've abandoned him. They're not coming back. George Clooney's not going to make a fool of himself by coming back and say he was wrong. The donors aren't going to start writing out checks again. No, they have somewhat decapitated themselves, or at least they've shot themselves in the foot on this one, and they're in a mess. The Democratic Party's in a mess right now.
And the media too, because they're attached at the hip, correct?
So if you can't win by promoting Joe Biden, the only way to win is by taking down Donald Trump, and that's why they're not going to stop.
No, they're not going to stop. All right, my friend, thank you. God bless you, and hang in there.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
All right, be well. Of course he's passionate and emotional. He has to watch this stuff day in and day out and deal with it. Terrible. The media never learn, America. They'll be back. In fact, they're already back. They're already back. You can see how they're positioning, how they're moving. Those of you who have the book on freedom of the press, you ought to dust it off and read it again. Seriously. All this is predictable. It's all exposed. Take another look at it. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
All right, let me know when we have a minute and a half left, Mr. Producer. So, minding my own business, about 30 minutes before President Trump goes on that stage on Saturday, calls me to chit-chat. I won't discuss everything, but among other things, he asked me what I thought about the filing in the Manhattan case, which I thought was brilliant, on the appeal. We discussed some other things, and here's what he says to me at the end of the call. It went on about 10, 12 minutes. First of all, he says, you know, Mark, there's 50,000 people out there waiting, and yet here I am calling you. That tells you how much I think of you. He's such a nice guy, and we've become very good friends. And he said, look, I want to tell you something. I said, yes, sir. He said, stay well. You need to stay well. We need you. Don't get sick. Now, I don't know why he said that. Maybe he heard I had COVID or something. I said, I will, Mr. President. Thank you. He said, and by the way, I want you to watch this rally. And he tells me RSB or one of these internet networks, which I've never done. Either they're on TV or they're not. So I watched it. And then, of course, the assassination attempt. I couldn't believe it. I said, whoa, did that just happen? I said, oh, my God. And my wife calls me, daughter calls me, everybody's very panicky, of course. Then I called him the next day after he'd been shot. I guess that would have been yesterday, right? Sunday? About 11:30 in the morning. I don't want to bother him. And he picks right up. And he said, Mark, he said, but for God, I don't think I'd be here. He said, can you imagine that? I called for that graph that I love, and I turned my head. And so he hit my ear. He missed my head. I mean, to hear him say it, it's just... And he said a few other things, too, that I don't need to repeat. I want you to know what a remarkable person this is. It's a man who's been impeached repeatedly, who's been criminally investigated, indicted, tried to bankrupt him. Look at what he's faced. Now the shooter, and he's the Republican nominee for president of the United States. I've told you before, this is a historic figure. He's truly a historic man. Don't listen to all the mental munchkins and the radical leftists in the media. Use your own head, and I know you will. I salute you all. You're all wonderful patriots. I'm honored by your presence, and I'll see you tomorrow. God bless.